Yeah, I'm at home. No, I'm at home in Luxembourg at home. Yes. Yeah, it's my home office. Yeah.
Professor Mark, if you don't mind, we will appoint you as adjunct professor in STEMIC Bandung. It's okay?
Okay. Sure. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. So today we will announce to our campus, our academic staff, student, and audience that Professor Mark will appointed as adjunct professor in STEMIC Bandung.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bro. Maybe we can start, Mr. Dani.
Yes, sure. Are we ready, Dr. Mark? And
yes, I am ready.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Bisa update dulu. Nah. Ya. Yes. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon here in Indonesia and good morning in Luxembourg. Yeah. Welcome to the international webinar series STEMIC Bandung, West Java, Indonesia. This is the sixth series of the webinar about strategies to build innovation and industrialization of digital business product. Especially for today webinar is about building new business through strategic innovation. Yeah. Today we will listen to some presentation on the webinar together with our special guest star speakers. Please welcome Dr. Mark Snieukas. He is professor at Luxembourg School of Business. And the second speaker is Dr. Abdurrahman. He is a chairman of STEMIC Bandung and Summit Bangun Indonesia. For your information, this webinar is attending by students, professionals, and the public who interested in this topic. And for the first agenda, would you mind, Mr. Abdurrahman, to giving opening speech for today's webinar? Please, Mr. Abdurrahman.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Dani Pradana. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning in Luxembourg, Euro. Professor Dr. Mark Snieukas. Professor Mark is professor at Luxembourg Business School Euro. That this is our honor that Professor Mark can join in our international webinar about how we can build innovation strategies for new business model. As Mr. Dani said just now that this webinar is sixth webinar in this topic, in this webinar series about innovation strategies, especially in digital transformation or digital business building. As we know that now we are in digital economy, that everybody, every company, every institution or organization, what about industry area, education, IT services, telecommunication, has its right that we can grow together. We can grow more and more with innovation, with innovation strategies. That innovation strategies is continual improvement, continual activity that we can perform every time, because innovation depends on our industry characteristic, our customer demand, our customer expectation, and environment that will affect to our organization or our company. Professor Mark is expert in innovation. I have some paper from his writing in LinkedIn and his website. And Professor Mark already mailed to me maybe every day, yeah, from his website about innovation strategies. Yeah, so I enjoy read Professor Mark writing, Professor Mark paper about innovation strategies. So now in this webinar, we can discuss with Professor Mark how to build, how to perform innovation strategies for new business model. As we know that digital transformation is not just usage about digital technology or emerging the technology that we can use, but how to combine digital technology and new business model to perform some value for our organization, our society, and our nation. So what framework we can use, the innovation strategies has important role to perform, to enhance our digital business and how our project in digital transformation in our company or in our client, yeah, maybe we are as consultant, innovation strategies has important role in digital transformation framework. So thank you very much for Professor Mark that will join us in this international webinar series about digital transformation topic, yeah, especially in innovation strategies. Welcome to Indonesia. Welcome to STIMIK Bandung. STIMIK Bandung is one of informatics engineering university in Bandung City, West Java, Indonesia, Professor Mark. So Bandung is a beautiful city, yeah, like Bali, yeah. But in Bandung there is no sea, yeah. Bandung is around is mountain, yeah. If you have visited Indonesia, especially in Bali, so Bandung to Bali approximately 2.5 hours, yeah, by plane.
Okay.
So once more, thank you very much, Professor Mark. Welcome to STIMIK Bandung and Indonesia. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Abdul Rahman, for your opening speech. Mr. Abdul Rahman has been explained about Dr. Mark and introduction about this webinar topic. So the second agenda is Dr. Mark will explain more detail in this webinar topic. Okay, please, Dr. Mark, now is your time. You have 30 until 40 minutes. And after that, we continue with Q&A session. Okay, please take your time.
Good, thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks again for the invitation. Can I share can you give me the sharing rights, please, so I can share my slides?
Yeah, sure.
And then we'll get started. So we have a Q&A session at the end, but if you have any questions in between, also feel free to just put them into the chat if you like.
Yes, okay.
So my slides should be up now.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good. So let's talk about new business building. Now, I've been interested in this topic on how to use innovation, or what I call strategic innovation, to create new businesses, either as a startup, but also my particular interest was in how established businesses can create new companies, new businesses, also with new business models, like Mr. Abdul Rahman said earlier. Now, the question is, why new business building? And I think in recent times, especially now in the last 2 years, it has become even more popular than before. So more and more, again, especially established businesses are looking at how can they innovate, how can they create new businesses, primarily to drive new organic growth. So here is an example. This is a quote from a recent study that the consulting company McKinsey has done with some 800 global executives, and building new businesses is a top priority for global executives, especially also during the COVID pandemic. Why are people looking at building new businesses? So here are the reasons. As you can see, it is a lot about obviously building new revenue streams, and I'm going to tell you more about that. But it's also about adapting to shifting customer needs and customer expectations. It's about protecting against industry disruption. It is also a means to increase organizational agility. And as we heard already, in the context of digital transformation, so new business building and building new digital businesses, it's also a way to modernize the whole technology architecture. So if you are a company, for example, and you have any of these goals on your strategic agenda or as a strategic priority, then looking at innovation for new business building might be a good vehicle to get there. The same study, though, also says, on the one hand, it is important, it's a top priority, but companies, and especially, again, established companies, traditional companies, incumbents, they lack the skills they need to be able to do that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So what are the skills that you need? What is the approach that you could take to build new businesses? And so, as I said, my interest was always in how can established companies create new growth businesses. And I did actually my research, my PhD work at Manchester Business School was all about this particular topic on how to create new businesses with new business models. And one of the companies that I investigated, and that's a story that I would like to share with you, if you allow me, is from a German company called ProSieben Sat.1. Now, ProSieben Sat.1 is the leading TV media company in German-speaking Europe. So it's in Germany, it's a leader in Switzerland, in Austria. And what they do, and what is important to know, is they do free TV. So you don't have to pay to watch it. You can watch it for free, but it's financed by TV advertising. So companies, they buy advertising space, and that's how revenue is created for the ProSieben group. Now, in 2012, they set themselves an ambitious objective. So they said, we want to grow our business by 1 billion euros in revenues over the next 6 years. So we want to go from 2.4 billion euro in revenues to 3.4 billion, or you could say increase it by some 40%. Now, the important thing to understand is, so increasing revenues by 1 billion, obviously it sounds already like a big number. And what makes it even more challenging is all the restrictions that ProSieben faced. So first of all, if you want to sell more, or if you want to increase your revenues, you try to sell more. Now, selling more is difficult because there is only a certain amount of advertising minutes that you have available. And in most European countries, it's even the case that the amount of advertising minutes that you are allowed to broadcast on average per hour throughout the day is limited by law. So you have a legal limit on how much of your product you can actually sell to the market. So if you can't sell more, another strategy to increase your revenues is to increase prices. Now, increasing prices is also very difficult for ProSieben. Why? Because usually their customers are big companies like the Coca-Cola, Nestle, Procter & Gamble, big automotive companies. And so they buy usually lots of volume. So they buy a lot of advertising minutes. And because they buy so much, they have negotiating power. They have a lot of negotiating power. Usually they don't buy even themselves, but they buy through an agency. So the agency pools even more demand and has even more negotiating power. And it's not unusual for an agency to have a discount of a list price of 60 to 70%. So they have a lot of negotiating power. So increasing prices with them is also very difficult. So you cannot sell more, you cannot increase price. Where are you going to find 1 billion in additional revenues? And that's where new business building comes into play. So first question you have to answer is, or have to ask yourself is, how to find opportunities for new businesses. And what we have learned in the past is that, especially if you want to create a new business as an established companies with your objective to grow your revenues, the best thing you can do, or the first thing you should do, is to look at customers that are underserved, neglected, or unhappy. So I know that traditional marketing would say that you always need to take care of your best customers. And yes, obviously that's true. So if you have good customers, you need to take care of them. But if a customer is one of your best customers, they are probably already buying all they can from you. And you're not going to find additional growth and additional revenues from your existing customers. You might find a little bit by introducing new services, new products, doing cross-selling, but it's not going to increase that dramatically if you keep on doing and keep on offering the same products and services and only focus on your existing customers. So you want to look at where can you find new customers. And theory has shown that the best way to find new customers, research has shown to find new customers is to look at underserved and neglected customers. So this is what ProSieben did. So I said already that a typical ProSieben customer is a big corporate like Coca-Cola, Nestle, Procter & Gamble. They do a lot of TV advertising. So who is not a TV customer? The small and medium companies. So they usually, startups, small and medium businesses, they don't buy TV advertising. And we're going to come to why, which is the second question. So why don't they buy? Well, obviously, as a small company, you cannot afford the expensive prices of TV advertising. But ProSieben, they did some research. They went out, they talked to startups, they talked to medium companies, small companies, and they found out that it's not only about the price. So yes, price is an issue. Some customers, they were really ready to and willing to pay the money, but they said, well, I have the money, I would want to spend it, but I don't want to spend it on something with an uncertain outcome. So I don't want to risk my money and doing TV advertising, but then not having a return. So that's a second challenge, a barrier for small and medium companies to engage with TV advertising. But then they also found out a third reason was that even those who were willing to spend the money and who were interested in working with ProSieben, they had the challenge that they didn't know how to do it. So they had no experience with doing TV media or TV media campaigns and TV advertising. So here you have a customer group, startups, small and medium companies, who is not yet working with you, and you have a couple of reasons of why they are not working with you. And that's the first step you need to do and to figure out. So think about potential customers and think about why are they not buying your product or your service yet. And this is your opportunity. Then next step is, so once you have your opportunity, so you have a customer group, you know they want your product or they want a similar product, but they cannot afford it, or they don't have the capabilities, the skills of doing it, they might not have access to it. How to design a new business with a new business model that helps you to seize that opportunity. And so in my mind, I think about designing a business as you have to think about your offering, that is your products, your services, your customer experience, and we're going to go a little bit more into the details. You have to think about your operating model, so your activities, how you do it. Some might call this a business model. And you have to think about your revenue model, so where is money coming from? In terms of the offering, so as I said, it's about the product, what are you selling? It's about the services you offer around, but increasingly, again, becoming more and more important to adjust to the different demands and expectations from customers as to the customer experience. So you really have to think about the customer experience these days. It's no longer enough just to sell a product, especially in the digital world. Also, we are all used to working with things like Amazon or Google and all the customer experience that we have from these type of companies. So we expect them from all the other companies as well. We expect them from banks, we expect them from retail, and so on and so forth. So you need to really think about your customer experience. Operating model or business model. So you need to think about what are the activities that you want to do or you need to do in terms of manufacturing or producing your service, selling your service, delivering it to the customer. And it's important to think about not only the parts maybe that you do, but you need to think about the big picture and all the activities that are necessary to provide the value to your customers. So again, if you think about Amazon, for example, so Amazon, for most of the part, it does not do the logistics, the delivery to the customer themselves, not yet. They are experimenting with drones, so they can also do the last mile. But today they rely on DHL or UPS. So these activities are also important. And then you need to think about what I called here the resources. So what are the resources the skills, the assets that you need in order to be able to perform these activities, who will provide them, so actors and partners, and what is the sequence of your activities. So sometimes business model innovation also comes from changing the sequence of your activities. You might want, maybe you remember Dell was one of the early examples in the 2000s, about end of 90s, early 2000s, of business model innovation. So Dell Computers was famous for their business model. And the thing that they are most famous for is that they went directly from the manufacturer to the end customer. So they eliminated the middle part, which was the distribution through a wholesaler or the retail shops. Now, this is what Dell was famous for. But the actual really innovation was that they changed the sequence of steps in the value chain. So traditionally, a computer manufacturer had to buy raw materials, they had to manufacture, they had to put the computer on stock, then it was shipped to a wholesaler, then it was shipped to a retailer, and then the retailer sold the computer to the consumer paid, and the money kind of went up the chain to Dell and to the manufacturers. Now, what Dell did was change that sequence. What you did with Dell is you ordered your computer and you pay already at the front instead of the end of the value chain. So you pay, and then Dell only sources the raw materials, then it only produces exactly what you ordered. So it's not going to have stock lying around that is not sold. It only produces what is actually sold, and then it comes directly to you. And because it shifted the sequence of activities, Dell always had a negative, at least at the beginning, a negative working capital, meaning that customers would finance the whole work in progress and the whole value chain of Dell. And that was really the true innovation, which also allowed Dell to become that famous and grow that rapidly in the initial years. So you have to think about your offering, you have to think about your operating model, your business model, and you have to think about your revenue model. And here in particular, you have to think about your revenue stream. So where does the money come from? What do customers actually pay for? How do you set price? And how do you facilitate the payment? And one of my favorite examples for an innovative revenue model is a French coffee shop. It's called Anti-Café. And what they do, so it's like a Starbucks, but coffee is for free. So you don't have to pay for the coffee. Now comes the big question, and I'm asking you to, if you have any ideas, you can put them into the chat. So if coffee is for free, what is the revenue stream for Anti-Café? Where does the money come from? What do customers actually pay for? Any ideas? And if you have any ideas, just feel free to put them into the chat. No, anything you can think of? So let me give the solution away. So what you actually pay for at Anti-Café is the time spent in the coffee shop. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. If you really understand your customers and you understand why most of the customers come to a coffee shop, it's not because they want to have coffee, but because they want to have a place where they can meet with friends, or they can do their work, they can access the Wi-Fi, they can sit comfortably. And if you look at a typical Starbucks, you know, lots of people sit there and they work, but they don't consume a lot of coffee. So Anti-Café thought, well, why don't we give away the coffee for free? Coffee is not that expensive anyhow. And if you go to a typical restaurant in the US, for example, you just pay one cup of coffee and then you have endless refills anyhow. So that's not what's really driving cost. But what is driving cost, and what is the thing that the offering, the customer experience, what the customer actually values is they have the possibility to sit there and to work. So Anti-Café said, well, we're going to charge them for the time they spent in the coffee shop. So you can have 1 hour for €5, you can have a whole day for 24, and then you can buy a monthly subscription if you like. And so it makes sense for the customers. The customers, they pay for what they really value. On the other hand, it also makes sense for Anti-Café. If you think about having a coffee shop somewhere in a downtown location, like in Paris, the rent is probably your biggest cost, and that's really driving your cost. So why not have customers pay for what is really driving the cost in your business? What did ProSieben do? So they said, well, in terms of offering, we're going to give free access to media to our customers. So first off, well, basic access at the beginning, it is for free. So you don't have to pay for TV advertising. So we take away the barrier of you cannot afford it. And we take away the barrier of you risking money for something with an uncertain outcome. We know that some customers, they don't do business with us because they don't know how to do it. So we're also going to do that. So ProSieben also took over planning the media strategy, doing the media planning, doing production of spots and putting them out there. So in terms of operating model activities, so they need to do spot production. They have become very good at targeting the right customers they want to work with. They needed some specialized expertise for that. And they've also relied on some shared services like finance, legal from the group. And finally, the revenue model. So the billion-dollar question. So if we give away our media for free, where does the money come from? So ProSieben said, we're going to do a revenue share model. So they called this media for revenue. So we give you our media, and if your revenues go up because of the media, the TV promotion that you did, we're going to get a share of that revenue. So only if we are successful, then we're also going to get paid as ProSieben. Now, if you have an idea like this, you first want to validate and test it. You want to know whether, is this a good idea? Is this actually going to work? And can we do it? Before you invest a lot of money and time and resources into building it out. So traditionally, you would do an analysis, you would do a planning, you would do an implementation. But what we see with what I call here strategic innovators, so it's more a lean startup methodology, if you like. So it's similar to that in terms of that you act first, you learn what works, what doesn't work, and then you use your insights gained to design the next version of your business, of your business model. What did ProSieben do? So how would you test an idea like this one without spending a lot of time and effort? Well, they did something very, very simple. They just issued a press release. So one-page press release, they said, this is what we would like to do. So we would like to offer you media for revenue share. If you're interested, just get in touch with us. So they didn't have anything built yet. They hadn't recruited any people. They hadn't founded any companies. They hadn't sorted out all the legal issues or the operational issues. Nothing was done. They just wanted to test first, is the customer at all interested in what we want to offer? And once we have a customer who's interested, then we're going to invest the time and the money to actually build it up. So they issued this press release. They got dozens of business plans back of interested companies, and they just selected a handful to get started. And then you start working. So, and during the work, obviously the maturity of your idea, of your business idea goes up and up. Right? So you go through a cycle of, you select 5, you work with those, and I'm going to give you more details on how that worked. You test what works, you see what doesn't work, you adapt, and then you keep on doing that. Right? But you don't keep on doing that forever. Right? So like lean startup would suggest that you have this build, measure, learn cycle, which kind of goes on forever. But what I found in my research is that there is some design phase where you go through a couple of these cycles. And for ProSieben, these cycles was about 2 years. So they had 2 years of testing, experimenting, fine-tuning. They were making already profit. So they were profitable after the first year. And by the way, that was the only KPI that they had. The only target that the CEO gave them was, you need to show me that this is profitable. So I don't care so much about how many users you have or how many customers, but you need to prove that it's profitable. And once it was profitable, then they switched into scaling it up. Once they had a model that worked fine, they switched gears to scaling it up. So this is what that looked like. And so the first iteration was, as I said, media for revenue, and they did not have a specific company focus. And working with these 5 companies, they learned a couple of things. So first of all, they learned that it works better with online businesses. Why? Because they had some offline businesses they worked with, like they had a lemonade producer, but you never know if the sales of the lemonade in the shop goes up. Maybe it is because people saw the advertisement, but maybe it was just a good, sunny, beautiful day. It was hot and people wanted to buy more lemonade to refresh themselves. But with online businesses, they could tell really exactly, they air the advertisement at 8 p.m. and at 8:10, they can see the clicks and the sales on the website go up. So that's why they said, well, let's focus on online businesses. A second thing they learned when it comes to the type of businesses was that offline businesses often have inventory risk. So you might create a lot of demand, but there is no supply, and they had less of these issues with an online business. And so that's something they learned. So they shifted away, they pivoted, if you like, from doing it with all types of businesses to only focusing on online businesses. And they also introduced a small fixed fee. The reason for this was just that they wanted to increase the commitment of the customers they were working with, right? So they learned that if it's totally for free, then they had to chase the startups to give them the information that ProSieben would need to be able to produce the spots, for example. They wouldn't have the information of who's the right target group and all these things. So they increased a little bit, or they introduced a small fee, which shifted some of the risk also from the customer from ProSieben to the customer. So they became more committed, and they started working more with ProSieben. So they did that. Then they learned that in the next cycle, in some cases, especially when working with startups, instead of media for revenue, media for equity would have been nice. So instead of getting a share of revenues they create, to get a share of the equity once there is an IPO. So they started also introducing this. So you have still the media for revenue share, but on top of that, they added the media for equity. The media for equity was also interesting because, again, when working with startups, the other investors, they were not too happy about the media for revenue share model. Why? Because yes, ProSieben would create revenues, but they would take cash out of the company. So the investors, they put money into the company, and ProSieben would always take cash out of the company. So with media for equity, now they are all in the same boat, if you like, and they're all interested in increasing the value of the equity. And the model became more interesting, not only for ProSieben and for the company they worked with, but also for the investors and the other equity shareholders in the company. And then in the final iteration where they are now at is that they have become even more sophisticated in terms of what online businesses work best. And they have created what they call a portfolio of strategic investments. But this is really stuff. So this is about 2 years of learning, of doing, of being profitable already, but working 2 years on refining all the details of the business model before then you say, now it's working, now it's fine. And now we switch to scaling it up. And when they switched to scaling it up, they founded a dedicated company. So now you have really a new business that is only doing this media for revenue and media for equity share business, if you like. They scaled it up, so they hired more people, they standardized operations, they standardized the whole legal thing. They first scaled it up in Germany, and then they also went to France to replicate it there and do the same thing there. But only after the 2 years of testing, if you like, and the designing of all the details of the business. So how do you know it's a good idea? When is it time to shift from the design phase to the scaling up phase? And my take here is that you have to look at the value that you're creating. So the new business and the new business model needs to create value for you as a company. And that can be a strategic value, it can be operational value or financial value, like with the Dell example. It obviously needs to create value for your customers, and increasingly important is also it needs to create value for your ecosystem, all the partners that you're working with, because why would they want to work with you if you don't create value for them? So in the ProSieben case, the ecosystem was the other equity partners. So here's just a summary of the value created by the new business model for ProSieben. So new revenue streams for them. They became independent from their existing customers. They built up that portfolio, and they could also use the data they get from measuring the sales in this new business model for their traditional business, which improves their negotiating power towards traditional customers, because a traditional customer like Coca-Cola, they don't tell you how much sales they make from TV advertising, but now they have the data and they can use that to negotiate. Customers, as we said, access to free media, it's risk-free, there's a low upfront cash out, and no need to deal with the media. And for the other investors, the value proposition was really about increasing the company value before an IPO, for example. And nowadays, so one of the strategic portfolios they have is they have the objective to become a leader in online travel. So they have one portfolio which is all about online flight booking, vacation booking, hotel booking, car booking, weather channels, all these things, something that has nothing to do with traditional TV advertising, if you like, but it has to do with being able to leverage their media power in a different market, in this case, online travel. Another portfolio is about lifestyle. So they have online dating portals, online fitness programs, these kind of things. Now, the big question, did it work? So if you remember, in 2012, they had 2.4 billion in revenues, and they set themselves the objective to get to 3.4 billion by 2018. Now, they had already 3.2 billion by 2015. So they increased their revenue target every year. And at the end, they achieved roughly 4 billion in revenues. So they increased by 1.6 billion, or roughly 67%. And all that increase came from the new business. So it was really new business that drove the growth. If you look at the numbers, the traditional TV advertising is really pretty flat. There's a little bit of up and down, but it's mainly flat. And all the growth came from the new business with this new business model of media for revenue share and media for equity. So to kind of sum it up, if you want to do strategic innovation, you have to ask yourselves the traditional questions of strategy on where to play, how to win, but you have you take a more innovative approach, if you like, to finding the answers to these questions. So you look at customers and non-customers, you look at their needs and jobs to be done and the whole experience, what is keeping them from having a good experience. Then you need to design your offering, your operating model, your revenue model. And finally, how to win is not a matter of being cheap or being different, but it's increasingly a matter of creating value for everybody who's involved in this business. And that's what I call strategic innovation. So you take a more strategic approach to innovation by linking it to your company objectives, like creating new revenues. And you take a more innovative approach to strategy by asking the typical strategy questions, but you take a different approach towards answering them. If you're interested in learning more, so there's a book called The Art of Opportunity, which is actually available in Bahasa. So you should get it in Indonesia. This is the more managerial approach, if you like. The other one, business model innovation as a dynamic capability, is the more research and the more academic view on the topic. You can also go to artofopportunity.net. You get there's a lot of free stuff that you can actually download there. So you have tools that you can download that can help you to do this. And there is also an online masterclass available. Yeah, with that, so let me just close with the words of Master Yoda. So it's really about being committed and doing things. So the Master Yoda said, do or do not, there is no try. So it is really about being committed. Thank you very much for your attention. And I think now we're open to questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mark, for explaining, sharing about building your business through strategic innovation. This webinar lives in Zoom and YouTube channel too. So some participants, audience join with Zoom and YouTube channel. Okay, to all participants, audience who want to ask some question, you can raise hand or via chat room in English or in Bahasa Indonesia, please.
Okay.
Yeah, please, Mr. Abdurrahman.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dani. Thank you very much, Professor Mark. Yeah, in your slide just now there is an interesting slide for me about ecosystem value. Yeah, that in your book about the art of opportunity, that the ecosystem value must be created in our new business model. It's right?
Yeah, I mean, it's two things. So one thing is what we describe in Art of Opportunity is when you think about the new idea, you might also want to look at your ecosystem, and you might want to look at what are the strength of your ecosystem, what are special capabilities that you might have access to, and how you can then also leverage them.
Okay.
So that's one way of looking at it. And the other way of looking at it is that, so if you create an idea and you need partners to make your business model really work, then you have to think about what is the value that you are creating for the partners in your ecosystem. And I think that's also a little bit of a different approach, or a new approach, in the sense that it used to be traditionally, I still remember like the 80s or the 90s, where Volkswagen, for example, they would squeeze everything out of their suppliers. Right? So it's not really creating value for your suppliers any longer if you squeeze them and you try to push them and decrease their margins more and more. Right? So it's not really a sustainable strategy. So these days we think about, if I have suppliers and I need suppliers, then I want to create value also by working with them. And if you think about companies like Apple or like Nike, they don't have production anymore. So I mean, every Apple product is always designed in Silicon Valley, designed in California, and it's manufactured in China. But it's not Apple who owns the manufacturing, and they work very closely though with the manufacturers. And so there is that creation of value also for the manufacturer, in the sense of giving them knowledge, helping them to develop their manufacturing technology further, so that Apple can have a better product. But that's what I really mean by creating value for your ecosystem.
Professor Mark, how to make a relationship between customer value and ecosystem value? As we know that if we perform our business model, the first thing is how to build more and more for customer value. So how about to make relationship between customer value and ecosystem value?
Well, I think that it's really about balancing the customer value, the ecosystem value, and the value for you as a company. So it's really, you need to create an idea that works on all three levels. Like in design thinking, we talk about desirability, feasibility, and viability. Right? So it's really about creating all these types of values, because that's the most powerful ideas these days that work. And if you think about, so in Asia, I can think about DBS, the Singapore bank. And they have opened up their business model. So they say their slogan is bank less, live more. And with this slogan of less banking as a bank, and it's kind of, I think it's very interesting that the bank is saying less banking, but more life. And they want to help people do that. So in the DBS banking app, for example, you have lots of other things. So you can order food, for example. When you have that, you can find a restaurant, you can find, DBS helps you to find apartments. And then obviously they want to have all the financial transactions in relationship with the apartment, but they allow other partners on the platform. So they provide more value to the customer because they have an easy access on one platform for the customer. And they provide value for these ecosystem partners who can work and be on the platform. Again, it's like Apple, iTunes store. So you provide value to the customer. The value of the iPhone has become a lot more for the customer because there are so many apps and so many things that I can do with my iPhone. And at the same time, the platform is a distribution channel for all these other partners. So you have the two sides of value that come together, if you like.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Mark. Yeah. So if we perform innovation as continual improvement day to day, as we must do, so in our company, we have to perform like Chief Innovation Officer or department that focus on innovation, Professor Mark.
Yeah, so I think there is, so when it comes to innovation, and also you talked about digital transformation earlier, what I see is there are two types of innovation, or there are also two types of digital transformation, if you like. There is one type of company who looks at digital transformation as modernizing their core business. So they want to become digital, they want to have better processes, digital processes, less paperwork, all these things. So that's what I call modernizing the core through digital transformation or through innovation. And then on the other hand, the second type they look at innovation and they look at digital transformation in the sense that we discussed today about creating new businesses. So it's two different types, and you have to think about, if a company says, okay, we need digital transformation, what is it that we want? Why are we doing it? To modernize our core or to create something new and a new business, right? Obviously, at the end of the day, then the two, they're going to reinforce each other, but it's really these two that are separate. Now, if you want to do the type of innovation where you say it's about modernizing our core, you need to involve the people, right? So yes, it helps to have a chief innovation officer, and it helps to have a team that knows about innovation methodologies and frameworks, and they know about digital technologies, so they can help the business do that innovation. But it's more a sense of it's innovation from everybody, and it is going to be more evolutionary. If you want the more revolutionary, disruptive innovation and create something new, there you need a dedicated team who does this and only this. And why? So in my experience, if you ask the people in your business to do disruptive innovation, they just don't have the time to do that. You know, they have a full-time job, and you ask them to do other stuff on top. They might not have the knowledge, they don't have the time to think about it. And very often, because they are so ingrained and so busy in the traditional business, they don't really have an open mind to think about what else could there be, right? So that's why, depending on your goal, you need a different approach. But in these two cases, yes, I think you should have somebody who's in charge of leading it, and somebody who's in charge of innovation. Whether you call it chief innovation officer or you have a senior vice president innovation. ProSieben, for example, there was a senior vice president innovation who was at the top of this initiative. But it was also in the first 2 years when they did a lot of the experimentation and the testing, it was only him and somebody who came just out of a business school, for example. So you also don't need a big team to develop these ideas. And in both cases, I think it's very important to have, and again, that's my research has shown that the successful innovations, the successful business model transformations, they were always very driven by the CEO. So we really have that senior leadership, CEO support to be able to do your things.
So innovation culture in the business or in the company, the approach is top-down approach, or maybe combined with bottom-up approach, Professor?
Yeah, I think these days you would go for a top-down, bottom-up approach. I think top-down should always come with, why are we doing it and what is our objective? So are we doing it because, what do we expect out of it? Growth, operational efficiency, cutting costs. So these things need to be clear, and these things need to come from the top. So management needs to say, our strategy is this, and that's what you should be working on when it comes to innovation. Because then also, you know, if you just say, let's all be innovative, and then everybody comes up with new ideas for businesses, but you say, no, but what we actually wanted to do is be more efficient from an operational point of view, then, you know, all the effort is wasted. So that's why that needs to come from top down, I think. And then bottom up, you can have, okay, how are we going to drive growth? Where do we see opportunities to innovate and be digital and digitize our processes so that we become more efficient? And how are we going to do it? You leave that to the bottom up, if you.
So for innovation portfolio that needs money, that needs budget in our company, because innovation needs some budget. So innovation portfolio management, yeah, I think will push with top-down approach, Professor Mark, yeah. So CEO must support this innovation approach, so company can create some innovation to grow business model.
Yeah, so I think in terms of portfolio management, yes, you're right. So again, you need the objectives, and you need to know why you're doing it. And once you know why you're doing it, you can have a portfolio of projects and can see whether the projects are actually working on your priorities. And then there's like, for example, the innovation ambition matrix that tells you about, is it core, is it adjacent, is it transformational, and other ways to think about it. So my approach is always, you need to think about the objectives, and then you can see what projects are aligned to these objectives. You can think about, how do you want to distribute the budget. If you say, okay, we have as objective growth and digital transformation, and digital transformation currently is more important, so you might have 60% of your budget there and 40% of your budget for growth initiatives, right? And then you can, if you know the objectives, you can manage the budget and you manage the project and the portfolio in that.
Yes, as we know from some paper that digital transformation project, only 30% that success in digital transformation project. So 70% is fail and challenge. Yeah. I think what innovation strategies may be fail in this project. So digital transformation is fail, Professor Mark.
Yeah, I think so. I wrote an article on that, which I called so digital transformation is not really about technology. And so technology, and that's where a lot of the failure comes from if you only focus on the technology. But it is about, you need the leadership support. You need to think about what are the strategic objectives. Why are we doing digital transformation? Then you need to think about how are you going to enable your organization and the people who do digital transformation to actually work on these projects using design thinking, using agile methodologies to go in a more iterative test and learn and provide value kind of way. And so these are all the things that you really need to look at. So you also need to look at and work on the culture. So establish a culture of learning through, again, these new ways of working and agile and design thinking, as I said. So it's not only looking at the technology, right? So again, you need to look at the big picture. You need to have leaders who understand what is the impact of the technology on our business and how can we use it. So it's a more holistic approach that you need to take. And if you look at all the research, then that's what making digital transformation is successful, right? You have to look at all these things and not just at the technology.
Okay, thank you, Professor Mark.
I think there's a question in the chat, but somebody has to translate it.
Yes, I will translate it. Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Abdul Rahman, for your question and your answer, Dr. Mark. First, I will inform to all participants and audience there is an attendance list. You can fill in the presentation link to get e-certificate. Yeah. There's a question from Mr. Iwan Eka Putra. It's very interesting presentation from you, Dr. Mark. And Mr. Iwan, he is in transportation business. As we know, for this situation, pandemic situation, there is a rapid antigen test, or in Indonesia, there is Genos test, but his customers are still not increased. And his question is, he needs some suggestion from you, Dr. Mark, about this situation.
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, it's about more customers in a transportation business, right? So I don't know. Do we know what type of transportation is it? Is it buses or airlines or ships or?
I think not airline. I think.
Yeah. So I think
Except airline.
One thing obviously is that the current context is very special and it makes things difficult. Nevertheless, we have seen lots of companies who have adapted quite nicely to this challenging situation. So in terms of transportation, what I've seen as interesting examples is also to, again, focus on different types of customers. And so if you, let's say you do buses and your traditional customers, you have less customers traveling by bus because less people go to work and they stay at home and all these things. Or train, I say it's a train. What we saw a lot with buses, at least, for example, is that bus companies also here in Luxembourg, they turned to the ministry for doing mobile testing stations. So you use the bus, but for a completely different purpose and a different service. So you, instead of transporting your customers, you say, we're going to do mobile COVID test stations, and we drive around the country. We drive to schools, for example, and we have a mobile test station in the bus. So you find a new customer that can use your service. Right? So for trains, well, I don't know whether it's feasible. Just an idea from the top of my head is, how about a restaurant in the train, something like that, where you have your compartments, so it's a little bit more closed maybe, and you have less contact. That might also be an opportunity to, if you, I don't know your trains, right? But if you have trains with smaller compartments, I mean, that's an idea to promote that more and say, you know, going by train is safer because you can stay in a small compartment. You can have a compartment for just your family, so you don't have any other guests traveling with you, things like that. Stationary train, so you have some kind of experience in the train without the train actually moving, like, you know, maybe serving some food there. I think Singapore Airlines did that, right? They had grounded the flights, but you could buy dinner. And then, so you went into the plane and you had your dinner served in the plane. So obviously they did business class or first class experiences without having to fly.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Iwan, for your question, and Dr. Mark for your
answer. I hope it was
answer.
a little bit helpful.
Yeah, Mr.
But yeah, I think again, so
yeah.
I think the key thing is, look at other users. So don't look at your traditional customers, but look at how can you leverage the train to get to new customers and new needs that you can fulfill maybe with the train.
Yeah, his business is in train transportation. Mr. Abdurrahman, do you want to add something to answer Mr. Iwan's question? Maybe in bahasa.
Oke, saya kira yang ditanyakan oleh Pak Iwan Eka. Sorry, Professor Mark, I will answer by Indonesian language ya. Apa yang disampaikan oleh Pak Iwan Eka terkait dengan bagaimana strategi untuk ya paling tidak menambah kuantitas pelanggan, Pak ya. Karena Pak Iwan sudah menyampaikan di sini bahwa Pak Iwan juga memiliki bisnis transportasi ya, dan sudah ada Ginos ya, atau rapid antigen ya. Ini menjadi kendala bagi pelaku bisnis transportasi ya, Pak Iwan ya. Mungkin Pak Iwan bisa menjelaskan lebih detail ya, Pak Iwan. Silakan Pak Iwan.
Ya, terima kasih Pak Abdurrahman, Pak Dani. Jadi kami di kereta api, sebagaimana yang saya sampaikan tadi, sudah mempunyai rapid antigen ya, dan ada genos. Terus kemudian kita juga ada promosi ya, harga segala macam gitu. Namun sampai saat ini ya kondisinya belum ada peningkatan yang signifikan ya terhadap pelanggan kita gitu. Seperti itu Pak Abdurrahman kondisinya.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Iwan ya. Ya, saya kira kita semuanya mengalami shock dalam 1 tahun nih Pak. Atau mengalami gegar Pak ya, ada shock culture atau shock bisnis sejak awal tahun 2020 hingga sekarang, sehingga roda ekonomi kita ini kan agak tersendat nih Pak Iwan ya. Jadi ini memang membutuhkan waktu Pak ya. Ini tidak hanya bisnis transportasi tapi juga bisnis-bisnis yang lainnya Pak ya. Saya kira pandemi COVID-19 ini telah membuat ya dinamika bisnis semua sektor saya kira perlu dilakukan redesign lagi Pak bisnisnya ya. Tidak hanya cukup dengan melakukan semacam marketing effort ya, dengan mengurangi misalkan ya, ada mengurangi biaya, kemudian free rapid test, Ginos dan sebagainya. Tapi paling tidak Pak Iwan, yang saya lihat ya, bahwa sejak awal tahun 2021 ini kalau saya perhatikan trennya cukup naik Pak, walaupun belum signifikan dibandingkan dengan periode bulan Juni sampai dengan Desember 2020 Pak ya. Nah, seperti saya sejak 1 tahun ini baru 2 kali saya naik pesawat Pak Iwan ya. Itu biasanya saya sebulan 4 kali naik pesawat, itu dalam setahun ini baru 2 kali naik pesawat ya, ke Balikpapan dan terakhir kemarin ke Banda Aceh ya. Nah, dalam perjalanan saya menuju Banda Aceh atau Balikpapan dalam 2 bulan terakhir ini saya lihat masyarakat sudah mulai beradaptasi dengan kondisi saat ini, Pak. Ya, artinya dengan adanya rapid antigen, ya sebenarnya sudah memberikan rasa kenyamanan, ya rasa kenyamanan bagaimana safety melakukan traveling, Pak ya, melakukan traveling apapun itu untuk kegiatannya. Nah, saya perhatikan Pak, kalau di daerah nih Pak Iwan ya, di Aceh, kebetulan kemarin saya keliling di pesisir timur Banda Aceh, Lok Sumawe, kemudian lewat Medan, itu masyarakat di sana terus terang sudah mulai beradaptasi, dalam tanda kutip sudah normal Pak Iwan. Aktivitas masyarakat, aktivitas bisnis itu sudah relatif lebih normal lah ya dibandingkan di kita yang di kota besar di Pulau Jawa, khususnya Bandung dan Jakarta gitu Pak. Nah ini saya kira adaptasi dari shock bisnis atau shock culture dalam 1 tahun sekarang, 1 tahun yang kita alami saat ini saya kira sudah mulai pelan-pelan recovery lah Pak ya, recovery. Ini recovery-nya tidak hanya karena intervensi dari pemerintah, tetapi masyarakat sudah mulai beradaptasi Pak ya, karena memang kehidupannya sudah harus hidup dengan kondisi pandemi COVID-19 ini ya mau tidak mau bagaimana bisnis kita beradaptasi lah, menyesuaikan gitu Pak. Nah, mengenai strategi ya, seperti Dr. Mark tadi sampaikan, memang ini menjadi challenge bagi kita, Pak ya. Bagaimana kita menciptakan value bagi ekosistem kita, kemudian customer kita ya. Nah, ini tentunya berbeda antara tradisional approach dengan Profesor Mark membuat suatu buku, sempat saya baca itu adalah The Art of Opportunity, Pak ya. Jadi modern approach yang dibangun oleh Profesor Mark saya kira cukup bagus, Pak ya. Hanya bagaimana kita mendesain harmonisasi antara customer value, ecosystem value, kemudian stakeholder value tadi, Pak ya. Nah ini membutuhkan strong leadership kalau kita di perusahaan ya. Kalau menurut saya ya top down itu Pak, paling nggak CEO itu harus memiliki strong leadership bagaimana membangun strategi inovasi yang berkesinambungan ya. Karena inovasi itu kan tidak bisa hanya ad hoc Pak. Karena inovasi tentunya tergantung daripada kondisi lingkungan bisnis kita, kemudian bagaimana respon ke customer kita ya, kemudian bagaimana makro ekonomi kita sekarang memang sangat mempengaruhi kondisi mikro bisnis Pak ya. Saya kira itu Pak Iwan ya. Tapi paling tidak kita optimis Pak ya. Itu memang belum signifikan dibandingkan tahun 2019 memang Pak Iwan. Jadi saya perhatikan awal 2021 ini menunjukkan tren yang cukup baik Pak ya. Gitu. Makasih Pak Iwan.
Terima kasih Pak Abdurrahman penjelasannya ya. Makanya saya tertarik temanya kan itu apa? Strategic innovation, makanya ikut gabung. Makasih Pak Abdurrahman.
Punya menarik Pak. Itu nggak terlalu mahal, bisa beli online Pak. Punya.
Oke.
Ya.
Oke.
Oke. Terima kasih Pak Iwan, Pak Abdurrahman atas diskusi yang sangat menarik. We come back to the question. There is a question from Mr. Gede Madekarma. Innovation is a challenge in business. It can be successful, and of course, the chance of failure are also great. Yeah. Please explain further. What should we be considered if we want to innovate, especially related to science and technology? Please, Dr. Mark.
Okay, well, I think so there is evidence in the research that if you focus again on customers and customer needs and unsatisfied customer needs, that your innovation can be more successful. And I think that again, especially when it comes about science and technology, that's something important to consider. So you should not just create something. If you innovate science or innovate in technology, just innovate something because it is a challenge from a technological point of view or from a research point of view, right? And you want to do something great, but rather focus on first understanding what is the problem that you want to solve, and then think about how can we solve that with an innovative scientific discovery or with innovative technology. Right? So at least in the business world, as I said, so there is some research that has been done on how companies innovate and what are innovation approaches. And basically you could say that there are 3 types of how companies approach innovation. So there is the ones that you might call it has been called the need seekers. So they start with a deep understanding of customers And once they have understood what is really the problem of the customer, what does the customer need, then they try to solve that problem and innovate around that. The second type of customers is more of companies that do innovation is more a little bit of copy paste, but evolutionary. So you look already at the market, you look what is there, you look what is working well, and you try to just improve that. And the third type of companies is those who are more internally driven. So they innovate new technologies and they just throw them at the market and try to find the customer problem that they can solve with their technology, if you like. And so the research has shown that the first type, the need seekers, are the most successful in terms of the degree of innovation. So they tend to be more innovative than the others who start by copy pasting. Obviously, it's more incremental, but also by those who start first with the technology. And it's also, at least when it then comes to the business world, from a financial point of view, more successful and more sustainable if you start with the customer instead of starting with the technology. And if I say customer, I mean customer can be an end customer. It can be B2C, it can be B2B, it can also be somebody internally. We spoke about digital transformation. So a customer internally can be any type of stakeholder. It can be an employee for whom you innovate and you want to make life easier.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gede Made Karma, for your question, and Dr. Mark for your answer. Is there any questions from audience or participants?
How about the transportation business in Luxembourg, Professor Mark? Is it normal like 2019 or still down?
So I mean, when it comes to trains, so there is only one railway company in Luxembourg, which is state-owned. So there is a monopoly there. And actually, what the government has decided is that public transportation is free in Luxembourg. So it's open to everybody who comes to Luxembourg. You don't have to pay for a bus or for train. So the idea there was more from a strategic point of view, if you like, for the country. We have some problems with mobility and we have problems with congestion in the roads. So they want to solve that problem by making public transportation free. And they actually only started right at the beginning of the COVID crisis. It became free. So obviously the volume has been not that big. And there is still some to be seen whether it really is going to increase. Other railway companies, I think that Austria had some interesting innovation, again, when it comes to digital, also working with, and particularly for transportation and of goods in trains. So they have created a digital platform where people can easily see whether there is space available and kind of can buy that space easily through an online platform. So maybe that's also something to consider. So we talked about, if we talk about customer experience, so how can you make it easier to buy train transportation, for example, especially if it's transportation of goods, what can you do there to enhance the customer experience, make it easier to book, make it easier to pay, all these things, which then increase the likelihood of somebody using the service because it's so much easier to do it.
Okay, thank you, Professor Mark.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mark and Mr. Abdul Rahman.
Thank you.
Is there any questions from audience?
Ini telah hadir Pak Maiko, Pak Dani.
Oh ya, Pak
Halo,
Maiko ya.
Pak Maiko is one of the expert in agile business. Maiko Torista. Hello, Pak Maiko. Maybe something that you will explain about agile business in innovation strategies, Mr. Maiko.
Yes, sorry, don't susah kolak, Pak. So, Mark, this is how Indonesian way when we are play. I mean, as a Muslim, we play with this kind of hat.
Okay, Mr. Maiko, maybe something you will share.
So, actually, if we talk about the innovation and efficiency is always, you know, if your if your company strategy is efficiency, then you cannot innovate, because efficiency is always need trial and error.
Yeah, well, I think that, so I think, and lots of companies do that, they have efficiency as an objective of innovation. So they say we need to be innovative, and the goal of our innovation is to increase efficiency. And so that's also why you have lots of digital transformation, which is geared at efficiency, or improving processes, improving employee experience so that you can be more efficient. And if you look at, again, if you look at the research, IBM, for example, has done a study on the return on investment of using design thinking at IBM. And one of the results that they found is that they increased organizational efficiency by a factor of, I don't know how much, but they were able to save money and be faster because they used design thinking as a methodology, right? So that had an impact on efficiency. So you could say that design thinking is a methodology for innovation, for creating new customer experiences, for creating new products and services, and at the same time it makes your company more efficient. So I wouldn't necessarily say that the two are excluded from each other. Now, if you think about efficiency as we can't spend any time or resources or money on anything else than our core business at the moment, then yes, there was a efficiency focus might be a limiting factor, so to say, to be able to be innovative.
Yeah, so I'm agree with you, Mark. So that's one of my thought. And then about the how you can do the business agility is also I think I have the same view with Mark, because actually we need to have the continuous improvement. So it's better to have the continuous improvement step by step, I mean small by small steps, instead of big transformation then end.
Yeah, I would agree that. So the big kind of top-down transformation is very difficult to do, right? And I agree that it should be more of an evolution. If your objective is internally improvement or innovating on the core, then it is this more evolutionary continuous improvement approach. The thing is that what I would see a little bit as a difference between the traditional approach to continuous improvement and more agile ways of working and innovative ways of working is that you should not spend too much time on the planning. You know, in continuous improvement, you have plan, do, check, act. And I remember that I was talking at I think it was an automotive company in Germany. We were talking about agile ways of working, and I was talking about this iterative cycle. And then somebody in the audience says, "Yeah, but we do this already anyhow, right? Because we have continuous improvement, so we do plan, do, check, act. So we do this." And then somebody else said, "Yes, we do it, but for us, it's plan. And then do, check, act is only so much, right?" Whereas I was saying, and from an agile perspective, you do, right? And then you check and you act, but the focus is on the doing, and the focus is not on the planning. So it's a matter of how you interpret this plan, do, check, act, and how you implement it.
Yeah, I think we both have the same view on this.
Good.
And yeah.
Okay.
So I believe Pak Abdul Rahman is also have some view on this.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Michael.
You are most welcome.
Yeah. Okay, Pak Dhani.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Miko and Dr. Mark, for our discussion. I think if there is no question, we are going to close this webinar. Mr. Abdul Rahman.
Mr. Dhani, before we close this webinar, we will announce about certificate of appointment to Mr. Professor Mark as adjunct professor. So we will share about this certificate. Please allow me to share this certificate. Please open my share session, admin.
Okay, please, Mr. Abdul Rahman, you can share your screen.
Okay. Professor Mark, thank you very much for your coming in our webinar. So in this time, Yes, on behalf of STIMIC Bandung management, yeah, we will give a certificate of appointment to you as our partner in academic and research, especially in innovation strategies. Yeah, so
Thank you very much.
STIMIC Bandung is one of the informatics engineering university in Bandung and Indonesia. So we need some collaboration in this digital economy. Yeah, especially university in Europe like Luxembourg Business School that Professor Dr. Mark as professor in Luxembourg Business School. Yeah. So in this collaboration, of course, yeah, collaboration in this webinar, we will continue in academic program, maybe in research or webinar in the other time, in the next time. So Professor Mark can share to us about research of innovation strategies. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. So I hope you can receive the certificate so we can collaborate anymore in academic and research university. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Abdul Rahman. Is there any closing statement for this webinar, Mr. Abdul Rahman? And continue with Dr. Mark, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dani and Professor Mark and the all audience in this international webinar about innovation strategies for building new business model in digital economy. Yeah. So Professor Mark has explained to us about big picture about innovation strategies that I think this is summary from Professor Mark book about the art of opportunity that I have read some of content from Professor Mark, yeah, because I follow your LinkedIn. So I think you are very, very productive author in digital transformation and innovation strategies. Yeah. So this is our hotline as our academic program in STIMIC Bandung and Solmit Academy. Yeah. So that innovation strategies is continual improvement, like Professor Mark and Pak Mekus that just know. Yeah, this is not ad hoc activity. Yeah, because innovation strategies is continual improvement that needs supporting and leadership, strong leadership from the all stakeholder in organization. Yeah, because this is a strategic approach, but also tactical and operational approach, I think. Yeah. So in our organization, in our company, from employee, so management and top management must support these innovation strategies. I think not just in company, but in national wide. Yeah. For example, in Indonesia, that Mr. President Jokowi has announced that from 2020, yeah, until 25, yeah, Indonesia must follow the digital transformation national. So not just for a state company, but for nation company, for government, and all organization in Indonesia. I think this is a strategic policy from our president that digital transformation must adapted in our life, in our culture, in our society. I think this is my closing statement in this webinar, Professor Mark. Once again, thank you. But inshallah, good willing, we will conduct this collaboration. Yeah, in next unit and next opportunity. Yeah. Thank you, Pak Dani. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdul Rahman, for your closing remarks. And continue with you, Dr. Mark, for your closing remarks too.
Thank you again. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak today. Thank you very much for the invitation to become an adjunct professor. I'm very honored by that. And thanks to all the participants for taking the time to join us today. I hope you found it valuable and that you learned something important. And please remember, the most important thing when it comes to innovation is to do things. So don't plan too long. Try and do. And with that, I wish you good luck and all the best for your studies and your innovation efforts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Mark. Thank you, all audience, participants, speakers, our guest speakers, Dr. Mark and Dr. Abdul Rahman, and supporting team besides me. And thank you for coming, and hopefully we will meet again in the next international webinar series. We always give a webinar series from STEMIC Bandung. Okay, stay healthy, stay safe, be happy and productive. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Pak Abdul Rahman.
Terima kasih ya Pak Maiko, Pak Iwan,
Sama-sama, Pak.
kawan-kawan.
Terima kasih Pak Abdurrahman.
Ya. The next kita bicara agile ya Pak Maiko ya, kita diskusikan Pak.
Siap Pak. Kita anytime Pak. Apa kita mau ngomong agile mau dari sisi IT atau kita mau dari sisi outside IT juga saya siap Pak.
Boleh Pak. Jadi mungkin untuk webinar berikutnya kita rencanakan terkait dengan agile Pak, agile methodology di dalam digital transformation ya.
Siap.
Teman-teman deh Pak Maiko. Kita atur ya Pak.
Siap Pak. Mari Pak. Assalamualaikum. Pamit ya Pak ya. Pamit semuanya.
Ya.
Thank you Professor Mark.
Thank you.
Please come to Indonesia if
Yes, I will. As I said, it was planned for April, but yeah, doesn't happen now. So let's see, maybe in September.
Oh, in September, okay.
Yeah. I'll let you know if I come. Then I'll let you know.
Okay, you will go to Bali or there is something?
Yeah, that was the plan. Yeah, some days in Singapore and then some days in Bali. But now that we have the connection, maybe we can also arrange something.
Yes.
Something to visit you and visit the university.
Okay, so we have a plan too to go to Luxembourg to your university.
Yes. Yeah. Let me know.
Yeah.
After 3 months or 4 months, we will enter in normal condition. So
yeah, let's hope so. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Yeah.
Your pronunciation inshallah is very good.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I only know inshallah and yalla is what I know as well.
Yeah.
Luxembourg is one country or?
Yes, so Luxembourg is a small country in between. So you have Germany, you have Belgium, and you have France, and Luxembourg is in between these three. Yeah.
How many cities in Luxembourg?
Citizens, we have about 600,000-700,000. So it's very small.